Gunshots exploded, startling Jason Bourne awake. He realized he had just been having a nightmare. To evade pursuit, Bourne wandered across the globe, making a living through underground cage fights. A hulking man stood opposite him, looking at him with disdain. The enthusiastic audience bet on the other guy, but surprisingly, as soon as the match began, Bourne delivered a devastating punch, knocking out his opponent instantly. The easy victory brought him no joy. Ever vigilant Bourne noticed a man watching him with a knowing look. It seemed he couldn't stay here for long. That weathered man was none other than Jason Bourne, the former top agent who had fled from the CIA. Bourne moved to a secluded place and began to catch his breath. He was no longer the young agent who had shaken the CIA 10 years ago. Now he just wanted to live a peaceful life. But for someone like him, how could he live in tranquility? Even if he wanted to, others wouldn't let him. While Bourne was on the run, a woman entered a warehouse in Iceland filled with servers and computers. This was the lair of young European hackers. The woman found a seat, opened her laptop, and began infiltrating the servers of CIA headquarters. She was Nikki Parsons, a former intelligence officer who had fled the CIA with Bourne 10 years ago. Nikki discovered all the dark secret plans on the servers, including the Treadstone project that had plagued Bourne. While reviewing the files, Nikki found out that the founder of the Treadstone project was Richard Webb, who turned out to be Bourne's father. This was a shocking revelation. While Nikki was still in shock at the CIA headquarters in Langley, USA, they detected an intrusion into the system. Hazer Lee, the sharp and capable young head of the CIA's cyber division, quickly identified the intruder's location: the hacker lair in Iceland. To prevent the intruder from downloading more data, Hazer activated a remote control program to cut the power to the entire warehouse. The whole server room plunged into darkness. Realizing she had been discovered, Nikki hurriedly pulled out the USB. She poured alcohol on the computer she had used and set it on fire to destroy the evidence. However, Hazer still managed to trace the intruder back to Nikki Parsons, the CIA traitor. Nikki's file was associated with a forbidden name within the CIA: Jason Bourne. She immediately reported the incident to the CIA director, Ward Abbott. Initially, Abbott wasn't too concerned about the breach, but upon hearing Bourne's name, his attitude changed instantly. Abbott decided that this time the potential threat must be thoroughly eliminated. Hazer seized the opportunity and requested to lead the mission. She had discovered that Nikki had entered Greece using surveillance cameras at Athens Customs. Furthermore, before the power cut last night, Hazer had planted a tracking program on Nikki's USB. If Nikki used it again, they could pinpoint her location and possibly catch Bourne as well. Abbott saw the young girl's craving for power and ambition, but since Hazer had a chance to capture Bourne, he decided to give her full command over the mission. Although Abbott outwardly appeared amiable and eager to nurture talent, he had his own hidden motives. Abbott contacted a close assassin codenamed Asset assigned to carry out a secret mission. Asset was also a top agent like Bourne. Upon hearing Bourne's name, Asset immediately agreed to take on the mission. At that time in Greece, Bourne was still unaware that his previously peaceful life was about to be swept into a new bloody storm. The past few years had not been easy for Bourne. Living a nomadic life, he earned a living through boxing, often ending up with a bruised face. During a match, he suddenly noticed a familiar face in the crowd. Planning to continue the act, he quickly decided to end the fight. After leaving the ring, Bourne found a note in his belongings. Nikki had arranged to meet him in an hour at Syntagma Square. As former intelligence officers in hiding, meeting up required extreme caution to avoid surveillance. Indeed, the CIA had begun monitoring Nikki, controlling all security cameras in Athens. Nikki chose Syntagma Square as the meeting point because it was chaotic with protests against the public debt crisis. She could use the crowd to evade surveillance. The situation at the square was intensifying, with clashes between protesters and riot police and the streets becoming chaotic. Nikki turned and saw the man she had longed to see. Bourne had arrived. She wanted to tell him a few things immediately, but he pulled her away at once. Standing still to chat was too dangerous at that moment. At CIA headquarters, Hazer Lee immediately recognized Nikki by her distinctive hair on the surveillance screens. She quickly informed the action team to apprehend her. As they walked, Nikki told Bourne that when collaborating with a hacker named Jen Gisso to sabotage the CIA, she discovered a large amount of data on the agency's secret operations. She found a new, even more dangerous plan called Iron Hand. However, Bourne felt that this was unrelated to him, as he no longer wanted any involvement with the CIA. He just wanted a peaceful life. Nikki had to reveal her true reason for seeking Bourne out. It turned out she discovered his father's name in the Treadstone Project files. Everything was connected to his father, and Nikki believed Bourne needed to see those secret documents. Just then, Bourne noticed CIA agents moving towards them. He quickly pulled Nikki away. On the large screen, everyone could see Bourne's face through the agents' cameras. The legendary man had truly returned. To shake off their pursuers, Bourne arranged to meet Nikki at the Athena statue, and the two temporarily split up. He would deal with those tailing him. CIA Director Ward Abbott ordered everyone to stay on Bourne and authorized them to shoot if necessary. The agents drew their pistols and pursued him. Bourne suddenly appeared, attacking two agents in the cramped train car. He intentionally chose terrain advantageous for facing a larger number of opponents. Bourne swiftly took down the agents. However, the altercation caught the attention of the Athens Tactical Task Force. Bourne quickly exited the train car and blended into the chaotic crowd. He knocked over a passing motorcycle officer, then commandeered the motorcycle and sped away. Behind him, a group of mobile police pursued closely. Just then ahead, a high-pressure water cannon vehicle seized by protesters stood in their path. The protesters allowed Bourne through but blasted the water at the pursuing police, causing them to tumble. Meanwhile, CIA headquarters had relayed Bourne's location to Asset, who sped towards the target. Nikki reached the base of the Athena statue and waited, but the CIA's second tactical team had surrounded her. In that critical moment, Bourne appeared. He took down the second tactical team and then picked up Nikki to leave. Just then, a silver fifth-generation Volkswagen Golf GTI raced towards them. Asset had arrived. Recognizing that Asset was not an easy opponent, Bourne quickly drove off. Asset accelerated in pursuit. The two cars chased each other through the fire and smoke-filled streets of Athens. Hazer Lee utilized the urban tactical data from the Athens police and satellites. With high-tech support, the chase path of Bourne and Asset was clearly displayed. Although Bourne's motorcycle was well-suited for navigating the narrow streets, with Hazer's coordination, Asset was aware of the traffic conditions ahead and stayed hot on Bourne's trail. Seeing that the main road was completely blocked, Bourne suddenly veered into a stairway alley. Asset couldn't react in time and crashed into a wall. As he stepped out of the car, preparing to take aim, Bourne sped out of the stairway alley. Asset quickly changed tactics. With Hazer's assistance, he found a high vantage point. He swiftly ran up to a rooftop balcony, ruthlessly shot dead the civilians there, then settled into a sniper position with his Scar sniper variant rifle. Hazer informed him that Bourne would be passing through the street in front of him in 11 seconds. Sure enough, soon Bourne's silhouette came into view through the thick smoke in Asset's scope. A gunshot rang out. Bourne and Nikki fell to the ground. Nikki was hit and writhed on the ground, fully exposed in Asset's scope, while Bourne fell behind a car out of his sight. At that moment, Athens's tactical forces stormed the building where Asset was hiding after discovering 3 bodies on the rooftop. Hazer Lee ordered Asset to retreat immediately. However, Asset, intent on killing Bourne, flatly refused. He kept his gaze glued to where Nikki was lying, convinced that Bourne would appear to save her. Bourne indeed wanted to rescue Nikki, but she, aware of the danger, struggled to hold him back. Seeing that Bourne was about to rush out, Nikki used all her strength to roll over, placing herself in Asset's line of fire. Nikki sacrificed herself to save Bourne. This naive woman had fallen for Bourne since the 3rd installment, and for years her heart had only room for him. Bourne was perhaps a bringer of bad luck, as all the women who loved him ended up dead before his eyes. Bourne reached for the key that Nikki struggled to give him. It was something she left for him in her last moments, surely something very important. On the opposite rooftop, by the time the tactical force arrived, Asset had long disappeared. On the cold streets of Athens, only Nikki's body lay alone. Later, Hazer Lee met with CIA Director Ward Abbott to ask a question that was troubling her. Why did Asset have such a deep hatred for Bourne? Was there a deep-seated grudge between them that was unknown? Abbott provided her with the answer. It turned out that Asset was once an operative of the Blackbriar program. At that time, he was on a covert mission in Syria. because Bourne exposed the Blackbriar project to the world, Asset was captured and brutally tortured. It took the CIA 2 years to rescue him. Thus, Jason Bourne became Asset's sworn enemy. Bourne, using the logo on the key, located a locker at the subway station. He opened locker number 17, and inside the case was an HK USP 9mm pistol. This was something Nikki left for him for protection. Although Bourne didn't like using guns, he kept the pistol on him. He then saw a metal box, and inside was an encrypted USB drive. This was likely the crucial data Nikki wanted him to see. Bourne also found a red notebook. In it, Nikki had written that the Treadstone operation had been upgraded to the Iron Hand operation, and all these plans were related to Bourne's father, Richard Webb. At the bottom of the page, Nikki wrote that Bourne was constantly being watched. In the corner of the notebook, Bourne noticed the address of the hacker Jen Gisso, whom Nikki mentioned, in Berlin. That was his next destination. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., USA, Aaron Kaluur, the founder of the largest social media network in the country, was giving a passionate speech. The Deep Dream platform, which he led, had 1.5 billion users worldwide. He boldly declared to his fans that Deep Dream would protect the privacy of all users and that no one would be surveilled. His speech received enthusiastic applause and cheers from the audience. However, it turned out that shortly afterward, the beloved young CEO secretly met CIA Director Ward Abbott at a small restaurant. It became clear that his previous bold statements were deceitful. In reality, the Deep Dream system was under constant CIA surveillance that exploited user data without any limitations. The CIA was using Deep Dream to monitor the personal information of 1.5 billion users, which was the core of the Iron Hand operation Nikki had mentioned to Bourne. Aaron Kaluur had heard rumors that someone had infiltrated the CIA's systems and downloaded classified information. If the Iron Hand operation were exposed, Deep Dream, Kaluur's brainchild, would suffer significant consequences. He no longer wished to sell users' personal information to the CIA and immediately wanted to sever ties with Abbott. However, Abbott, a cunning old fox, wasn't going to agree easily. He threatened Aaron Kaluur on the grounds of national security and then left. The sly old man treated the young CEO with no regard. Meanwhile, in Berlin, Germany, a young man wearing a hood returned home. As soon as he stepped inside, he sensed something was off. It seemed like someone had been through his belongings, and then Bourne appeared right behind him. The bald young man was Jen Gisso, the hacker Nikki had mentioned. Gisso was also sharp and instantly guessed who stood before him. After all, for anyone investigating the CIA's secret plans, Bourne was a legendary figure. Without preamble, Bourne tossed the encrypted USB that Nikki had left for Gisso and demanded him to decrypt it. The tracking virus that Hazer Lee implanted immediately sent out a signal. Hazer quickly identified the location where the USB surfaced and hurriedly reported the situation to Abbott, noting that Bourne had reappeared. Abbott was instantly invigorated, ordering the action team stationed in Germany to move to the targeted location. Hazer Lee sensed Abbott was taken aback, perhaps suspecting that Bourne wasn't targeting the CIA, but rather seeking to clarify matters about himself. However, it seemed Abbott was hiding secrets about Bourne and couldn't allow any mistakes. Hazer Lee gradually began to doubt Abbott. Meanwhile, Gisso finished decrypting the files for Bourne. While Bourne reviewed them, Gisso tried to recruit him, aiming to convince Bourne, like Nikki, to become an ally and together topple the corrupt government. But Bourne was only interested in uncovering the truth and had no desire to disrupt the status quo. Thus, he declined Gisso's offer outright. Gisso's expression darkened. Bourne discovered that his father, Richard Webb, was the one who initiated the Treadstone project. This revelation was difficult for him to accept. In more detailed documents, Bourne found a photo from the last time he saw his father just before he joined Treadstone. Bourne recalled that meeting where his father seemed burdened, needing to go to Washington for some crucial matters. Shortly after leaving, his father died in a car explosion, a tragedy Bourne witnessed firsthand. While Bourne was lost in painful memories, Gisso unexpectedly attacked him. Gisso grabbed a metal rod and swung it at Bourne. Unarmed, Bourne broke a chair leg to use as a weapon and quickly subdued Gisso. Everything that happened in the room was clearly displayed on the CIA's large monitors because Hazer Lee had activated all the cameras in this Berlin neighborhood. She also remotely connected to Gisso's phone in the room, attempting to wipe the secret data that Bourne was viewing. As Bourne was slowly going through the documents, the computer screen suddenly went dark. Hazer Lee had erased the data. Just as Bourne was about to leave, the phone on the table suddenly rang. Abbott had instructed Hazer Lee to call that number directly. Abbott spoke to Bourne directly for the first time. He told Bourne that his father was a patriot and that his death was a sacrifice for America. Therefore, Abbott hoped that whatever Bourne intended to do, he should stop and cease any actions detrimental to the CIA. Abbott spoke with Bourne in a sincere tone, intending to stall and keep Bourne at bay until the action team arrived. Aware of Abbott's malicious intent, Hazer Lee decided to betray him. She discreetly took out her phone and, while Abbott was not paying attention, quickly sent a message to Bourne. While Bourne hesitated, he received the message warning him of the approaching action team, giving him just 2 minutes to escape. Bourne hurried out of the room. As the agents rushed up the stairs, Bourne slipped away via the elevator shaft. The capture operation failed again. Abbott looked at Hazer Lee with suspicion, suspecting she might be up to something behind his back, but he had no evidence. Although Bourne vanished once more, the CIA reviewed the last document Bourne had seen. It was a file on someone named Smith, currently in London, who had participated in the CIA's Treadstone project. It was highly likely that Bourne would seek this person out to learn the truth about his father's death. Upon hearing this, Abbott immediately planned to send Asset to London to eliminate Bourne. Surprisingly, Hazer Lee openly opposed the idea. Abbott looked at the young woman in disbelief. He couldn't fathom that she dared to challenge him in front of everyone. The reason Hazer Lee had the audacity to do so was that a senior senator was also present, and this senator was quite interested in hearing Hazer Lee's opinion. Hazer Lee argued that Bourne didn't necessarily have to die. If they could bring him back to the CIA, he might be more valuable alive than dead. She believed she could talk to Bourne and potentially convince him to return. The senator found this idea intriguing. Abbott's expression darkened significantly. He hadn't expected the young woman he once considered mentoring would oppose him so openly. From that moment, Abbott began to contemplate eliminating Hazer Lee. Meanwhile, Bourne was on a train to London. The message he received at the room heightened his caution, indicating internal conflict within the CIA. Bourne immediately searched for information online, finding a profile on Hazer Lee. He discovered that her motivation for joining the CIA was to bring about real change, which suggested that collaborating with her could be a useful shortcut. In London, Smith, a CIA executive, received a call from an unknown number. Bourne introduced himself and expressed a desire to meet Smith for a conversation, arranging to meet at a square in 15 minutes. Before Smith could refuse, Bourne hung up. Smith was terrified, unaware that Bourne was clearly observing all his actions from a rooftop across the street. Bourne also noticed that CIA agents had already secured the square below. Upon receiving information about the meeting, Hazer Lee prepared to head to the square. She intended to find an opportunity to approach Bourne and speak with him directly. Hazer Lee handed a tracking device to one of her subordinate agents and instructed Asset to wait outside the square, advising against any rash actions. Asset, dismissive of Hazer's authority, thought nothing of the young woman, as he only took orders from Abbott. At this moment, Smith stepped out of the building, deciding to head to the meeting point. All the CIA agents trailed him from a distance except for Asset. Asset secretly communicated with Abbott through a separate channel and discarded the tracking device that Hazer Lee had given him into a trash can. He was still determined to kill Bourne, and Abbott smiled smugly upon hearing this. The first task force dispatched by Hazer Lee to monitor and protect Smith followed him into an alley where Asset ambushed and eliminated them from behind. Losing contact with the first team, Hazer Lee quickly sent a second team to follow up, but they too were taken down by Asset from behind. Now, all of Hazer Lee's operatives had been neutralized, leaving her unable to communicate with the agents she had deployed. Abbott deceitfully claimed that Bourne had killed them. Convinced that Hazer Lee had no control over Bourne, Abbott decided to let Asset proceed with the mission to directly eliminate Bourne. Hazer Lee realized that this scheme was orchestrated by Abbott and Asset, and the situation had spiraled beyond her control. In a hurry, she directed her driver to head to the square with the command vehicle. Asset, eager for assassination, positioned himself on the rooftop of a tall building. He brought out his Scar sniper variant rifle and aimed at Smith, who had just arrived at the square. Asset was ready to fire the moment Bourne appeared. However, Bourne had already prepared for this scenario. He pressed a button, triggering the fire alarms in all the buildings around the square to ring simultaneously. People poured out of the buildings into the square, which suddenly went from quiet to crowded. Smith, growing more terrified, turned to flee through the throngs of people, and Bourne surged forward from behind to seize him. Amidst the chaotic cover of the crowd, Bourne quickly maneuvered Smith out of Asset's sight. He took Smith to a secluded spot where he began questioning him about his father. Bourne had many questions. Why did his father create Operation Treadstone? Why was he being monitored? Why did his father die? Unbeknownst to Bourne, Abbott had already given Smith an earpiece and instructed him not to disclose anything. When Smith remained silent, Bourne dragged him to the edge of a balcony, causing Smith to scream in terror. Asset, searching below, heard the scream and rushed upstairs. Bourne was desperate to understand why his father initiated Treadstone without telling him and ended up dying before his eyes. He didn't even know who killed his father. Unable to hold back, Smith finally revealed the truth. Bourne's father died because of him. Richard Webb only sought approval for Treadstone and did not partake in any activities. When he learned that his son was the first recruit chosen for Treadstone, he planned to go to Washington to expose the situation to the White House, hoping to secure Bourne's freedom. Fearing exposure, Abbott sent Asset to assassinate Bourne's father. Therefore, Abbott and Asset were the ones responsible for his father's death, which was why Abbott was determined to eliminate Bourne. At that moment, Asset arrived and fired at Bourne. To escape, Bourne jumped off the balcony, landing on the ground and losing consciousness. By the time Asset pushed through the crowd, Bourne had vanished. As Bourne was about to leave the area, he spotted Hazer Lee's command vehicle approaching. He broke the car window and got in. Hazer Lee, who had intended to find Bourne for a conversation, was taken by surprise when he actively sought her out. As soon as Bourne got into the vehicle, he asked where Abbott was. Hazer Lee informed him that Abbott was currently in Las Vegas attending the 2016 Developer Conference alongside the CEO of Deep Dream. Once Bourne learned Abbott's schedule, he intended to leave, but Hazer Lee handed him a phone, expressing a desire to maintain private communication with him. Bourne was unsure why she did this, but Hazer Lee explained that they shared the same target: to kill Abbott. And thus a small alliance against Abbott was formed. Abbott arrived at the hotel hosting the developer conference in Las Vegas. His room was on an upper floor. He called Asset, instructing him to come to the conference to kill Aaron Kaluur, the non-compliant CEO of Deep Dream, and Hazer Lee, the traitor. Neither of them knew that Bourne was also in the city. Bourne arranged to meet Hazer Lee at the hotel casino. Taking advantage of a moment when Hazer Lee wasn't paying attention, Bourne discreetly placed a tracking device in her pocket. However, his intention wasn't to track Hazer Lee. He sent her a message instructing her to find a way to plant the device in Abbott's pocket. As expected, when Abbott and Hazer Lee met, both feigned cordiality. Abbott, outwardly affable, allowed Hazer Lee to accompany him, unaware that he intended to eliminate her. She agreed to her superior's request, and before going on stage, secretly slipped the tracking device into Abbott's pocket. Meanwhile, Asset had taken position in a high spot inside the hall, selecting a ventilation shaft facing the stage as his sniping point. Aaron Kaluur, who was scheduled to speak later, suddenly decided to address the audience first. He had long planned to use this conference to reveal the truth about the CIA's pressure on the Deep Dream platform. Realizing that Operation Iron Hand was about to be exposed, Abbott hurriedly called Asset, ordering him to immediately deal with Aaron Kaluur and Hazer Lee. Using the tracking device on Abbott, Bourne overheard this information. He immediately rushed into the hall. Looking up, he quickly identified the ventilation shaft as the ideal sniping position. Bourne used a flashlight to shine toward it. Asset, about to pull the trigger, was blinded by the light and missed his shot, hitting Aaron Kaluur in the shoulder instead. The hall erupted into chaos. Bourne fired repeatedly at the ventilation shaft, hitting Asset in the shoulder. CIA agents prepared to escort Abbott away, but he oddly insisted on returning to his room upstairs, seemingly anticipating the inevitable outcome. Abbott was brought back to his room and asked all his guards to leave. Bourne evaded the pursuing agents and ran to the elevator, making his way to Abbott's door and kicking it open. Abbott was waiting for him. Finally, they came face to face. Abbott appeared to know Bourne well. He told Bourne that during Operation Treadstone, he had killed 32 people, each of whom was a contribution to the national security of the United States. He suggested that Bourne had been wandering for too long and it was time to return. But Bourne could never return to the CIA. He refused to work for the man who had murdered his father. At that moment, one of Abbott's loyal men burst in. Bourne shot him but was hit by return fire. Abbott took the opportunity to aim his gun at Bourne's head. A shot rang out. Abbott fell. The shooter was Hazer Lee. Bourne took her gun and told her to leave quickly. He intended to leave as well. Hazer Lee knew where he was heading. Bourne would go after the true enemy who killed his father. Meanwhile, Asset had made it outside the hotel, killed a SWAT officer, and hijacked an armored Lenco Bearcat. This vehicle was equipped with a 6.7L turbo diesel engine featuring a 0.5-inch thick military-grade steel body that could withstand .50 caliber machine gun fire. As a specialized transport used by tactical forces, it moved through the streets like a small tank. Seeing Asset make his escape, Bourne also commandeered a black Dodge Charger to pursue him. The Charger was equipped with a 5.7L Hemi engine boasting a maximum of 381 horsepower, an iconic car often seen in the Fast and Furious series. Seeing Bourne in pursuit, Asset floored the accelerator, charging straight ahead. He crashed into a line of cars stopped at a red light, reflecting his lethal recklessness on the streets. After a furious chase, Bourne maneuvered to leap onto the roof of the armored vehicle. Asset swerved, crashing into the casino, where the vehicle finally came to a stop in the grand lobby. In a state of panic, Asset fled into the underground tunnels. Bourne suddenly appeared, charging after him. The final showdown between two of the CIA's elite operatives commenced, each consumed by deep-seated hatred for the other. Asset resented Bourne for betraying the organization, leading to his own 2 years of brutal torture. Bourne loathed Asset for murdering his father. They fought fiercely, each sustaining injuries. Asset grabbed a rope, attempting to strangle Bourne. "You'll always be a traitor. It's in your blood," Asset shouted. Bourne struggled, flipping Asset over, and tightened his grip until he broke Asset's neck. Once again, Bourne vanquished his enemy and gradually disappeared into the shadows. Meanwhile, Hazer Lee met with the senator, proposing to him that in the crisis facing the CIA, she could be considered an ideal candidate for the director position. Moreover, she was confident in her ability to bring back Jason Bourne, the CIA's major concern. After all, they had previously collaborated. However, if she couldn't bring him back, she wouldn't hesitate to eliminate him. Hazer Lee exited the car and headed into the park where she had arranged to meet Bourne. She brought a keepsake of Bourne's father to offer him, hoping he would return. With the old guard now out of the picture, Bourne could come back and serve his country again. Despite Hazer Lee's genuine expression, Bourne did not agree to her request directly. As she returned to her car, she was surprised to find a phone on the passenger seat containing a recording of her recent conversation with the senator. It's often said there are two types of spy movies: ordinary ones and those featuring Jason Bourne. This film marks the last installment in the Jason Bourne series, bringing Matt Damon back for the sequel 10 years after the third film. Even though this fifth entry was released much later, its brutal combat scenes and intense chase sequences assured fans that Jason Bourne was back. Once more, join the most formidable agent on the planet as he unravels mysteries and embarks on a perilous truth-seeking journey. The story concludes here. Thank you for watching. How did you find the movie? Please leave your comments below.